Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I would now like to resume the 10th meeting of the COP. We will take up the agenda items in the order presented on the screen, after which the meeting will be suspended. I now invite the conference to consider agenda item 8, Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage Associated with Climate Change Impacts. This item was referred to the SAPSA and SBI for consideration. As reported by the SBI and SAPSA chair, parties were unable to complete their work on this issue. The SAPSA and the SBI reported back to the President that further consideration was needed under the COP. The SAPSA and SBI chairs were appointed to consult further on this matter. As reported by the chairs of the subsidiary bodies, their consultations have resulted in a draft decision for adoption by the COP. I would like to emphasize that all parties have a right and shall have the opportunity to nominate members to serve on the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage in accordance with the decision in front of us. It is clear that the critically important work of the Executive Committee of the Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage associated with climate change impacts cannot be undertaken without agreement on the membership arrangements for the Executive Committee. Parties are, however, still consulting on the way forward with respect to the membership arrangements on the Executive Committee for the two membership positions for non-Annex I parties that have not been designated for any specific group or constituency, as specified in paragraph 5b of the draft decision contained in document FCCC CP 2014 L2. It appears to me that more time is therefore necessary for groups and constituencies to reach agreement on such membership arrangements for these two positions for non-Annex I parties. After consulting with parties, I would therefore like to propose the following way forward. I would like to request the chairs and coordinators of the regional groups and constituencies with non-Annex I parties to continue during the intercessional period their consultations and finalize the membership arrangements for the two membership positions for non-Annex I parties on the Executive Committee that have not been designated for any specific regional group or constituency, as specified in paragraph 5b of document FCCC CP 2014 L2. This agreement should provide for a permanent arrangement for these two membership positions for non-Annex I parties on the Executive Committee. Once these chairs and coordinators have reached agreement on such membership arrangements, I request these chairs and coordinators to communicate in writing this arrangement to the Executive Secretary. Once the Executive Secretary has received the agreement in writing, I request that she informs the non-Annex I parties of that agreement. Once that agreement has been communicated to all non-Annex I parties, I invite non-Annex I parties through their respective groups and constituencies to submit to the Executive Secretary the nominations for membership to the Executive Committee in accordance with paragraph 5b of document FCCC CP 2014 L2 and the agreement on the membership arrangements on the Executive Committee for the 2 membership positions for non-Annex 1 parties not designated for any specific regional group or constituency. This proposal will be reflected in the report of the proceedings of this session under this agenda item. I trust that parties can agree to this approach on the way forward. I now invite the COP to adopt the approach I have just outlined on the way forward as procedural conclusions to be included in the report of this session, and to adopt the draft decision, Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage Associated with Climate Change Impacts, as contained in document FCCC CP 2014 L2. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I wish to thank parties for their cooperation in agreeing to this decision and the way forward. Once the nominations are received by the Executive Secretary, they will be deemed elected at COP20 in accordance with established procedures. I would now invite the COP to consider agenda item 12, matters relating to finance. For sub-item 12A and B, Mr. Tosi Panu and Mr. Danny Drouin were appointed to co-chair these items. For sub-items 12C through E, Mr. Ayman Shasli and Mr. Stefan Schwager were appointed to co-chair these items. The co-chairs have all reported back on their results. I thank them for their hard work. In addition, Minister Edna Moleva and Minister Edward Davey were requested to conduct ministerial outreach on long-term climate finance and report of the Green Climate Fund to the Conference of the Parties and guidance to the Green Climate Fund. It is my understanding that during their 2 rounds of ministerial outreach with regional groups, they have listened carefully to parties and have tried to capture all views of parties in a balanced manner. I would also like to thank the ministers for their hard work. I will take up each agenda sub-item individually. I invite the COP to consider agenda sub-item 12A, long-term climate finance. I invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Long-Term Climate Finance as contained in document FCCC CP 2014-13. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider agenda sub-item 12B, report of the Standing Committee on Finance. I invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Report of the Standing Committee on Finance to the Conference of the Parties, contained in document FCCC CP 2014 L10. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider Agenda Sub-Item 12C, Report of the Green Climate Fund to the Conference of the Parties and Guidance to the Green Climate Fund. I invite the COP to adopt the decision entitled Report of the Green Climate Fund to the Conference of the Parties and Guidance to the Green Climate Fund, as contained in document FCCC CP 2014 L12. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider Sub-Item 12D, Report of the Global Environment Facility to the Conference of the Parties and Guidance to the Global Environment Facility. I now invite the COP to adopt the decision entitled Report of the Global Environment Facility to the Conference of the Parties and Guidance to the Global Environment Facility, contained in document FCCC CP 2014 L11. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I invite the COP to consider Sub-Item 12E, Fifth Review of the Financial Mechanism. I now invite the COP to adopt the draft decision entitled Fifth Review of the Financial Mechanism, contained in document FCCC CP 2014 L9. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I now invite the COP to consider Agenda Item 21, Other Matters. I would like to recall that at our third meeting, the idea of a declaration on education and awareness raising was put forward, along with the draft text. Consultations were proposed under the authority of the President on the proposal. Members of the presidency team, working in close collaboration with the Polish delegation, consulted widely with groups and interested delegations. Many parties came forward. Following those extensive consultations, a revised draft decision, the Lima Ministerial Declaration on Education and Awareness Raising, has been proposed. I believe that it reflects most of the concerns that parties have raised related to education and awareness raising in accordance with Article 6 of the Convention. I propose to all parties to adopt the revised proposal as contained in FCCC CP 2014 L1 Ref 1. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. Poland has asked for the floor.
Thank you, President. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. 2 weeks ago, I said my last legacy as a former president of COP will be an initiative on education. Since then, myself and the president of COP20, Manuel Pulgar Vidal, joined forces to promote ministerial declaration on education and awareness raising. We both agreed that education needs to be better highlighted in this process. Also, we worked together so well that the joint initiative was the best way to take this forward. And I want to thank for this excellent teamwork, as I feel we delivered something quite extraordinary. Over the last 2 weeks, when we were consulting the parties, we discovered that there is a lot of enthusiasm for our idea. It is of key importance how we educate our societies on climate, and I am glad you all share this by supporting this initiative. Today, we are making an important step towards bringing education back in the spotlights of our actions, where it belongs, and that's for I thank you all. Thank you, President.
I thank Minister Korolek, President of COP19, for his statement. I now invite parties to turn to agenda item 2D, election of officers other than the President. At our first meeting, parties were informed that Vice President Sheikh Sila, COP Vice President, was undertaking consultations on this matter. I offer my sincere thanks to Mr. Sila for his diligence and successful outcome of these consultations. The nominees for election of the other members of the COP Bureau are available on the UNFCCC website. I also take note that the nominee for Vice President from the Asia Pacific is still outstanding. I urge Asia Pacific states to conclude their consultations and submit the nomination to the Executive Secretary by 31st January 2015. Once received by the Executive Secretary, the nominee will be deemed elected at COP20 in accordance with established practice. I now invite the conference to elect the other officers of the Bureau of COP20. Once elected, the new Bureau members will assume office at the conclusion of this session. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I congratulate the new Bureau members on their election. On behalf of all parties, I would also like to express appreciation to the outgoing Bureau members, under whose guidance and leadership we have made tremendous progress during this past year, especially here in Lima. I now invite the COP to consider agenda items 3A and B, 7, 9A, and 12B. I would again like to thank Vice President Sila for his hard work in leading these consultations. The list of nominations received by the Secretariat has been distributed to parties in the room and is available on the UNFCCC website. Parties will note there are a number of nominations still outstanding on some of these bodies. I would like to urge groups and constituencies to continue the consultations and submit the pending nominations to the Executive Secretary as soon as possible and by the latest 31st January 2015. Once these nominations are received by the Secretariat, the members will be deemed elected at COP20 in accordance with established practice. I now invite the COP to elect the members of the following bodies as contained in the list of nominations. The SAPSA Vice Chair, the SBI Vice Chair and Rapporteur, the Adaptation Committee, the Advisory Board of the CTCN, the Standing Committee on Finance, the Technology Executive Committee. Hearing no objections, it is so decided. I would like to congratulate the members of these bodies on their election. I would also like to thank all the outgoing members for their commitment and hard work that has ensured the success of the work of these bodies. I would now like to suspend the meeting of the COP and resume the meeting of the CMP. The meeting of the COP is now suspended.